Howdy do, friendos. Welcome to a thrilling episode of Cooking with Steven. Today, we're going to be making some Vietnamese caramelized pork. I got this recipe from Recipe 10 to Eat, so if you want to check it out, I'll put a link in the description. So I'm going to be changing up the ingredients a little bit, so I'll just go through those real quick. You're going to need some cooking oil, an onion. Fun fact about onions, if you put them in the freezer, they won't make you cry as much. So the only thing left to cry about now is your girlfriend leaving you. Janet, if you're watching this, I still love you. The recipe says 2 teaspoons of grated ginger, but 1, I was too lazy to buy ginger today, and 2, I'm usually too lazy to actually grate 2 teaspoons worth. So you can be a loser like me, throw in some ground ginger and call it good. The recipe says you need some Thai chili, but you can use some red pepper flakes and it's basically the same effect, just dump it in there. 2 pounds of ground pork. The recipe says 1, but it's always good to double up. Brown sugar, fish sauce, and some scallions for the garnish. I'm gonna start off by pouring some of your oil into the pan. The recipe says like 1.5 tablespoons, but as long as you have enough to actually cook your food, you can just eyeball it. So while you get the oil heated up, you can start taking care of the onion and the garlic. You really only need a couple of garlic cloves for any amount of pork you're cooking, just to get that garlicky flavor in there. Sometimes I like to mince them so you don't have giant garlic chunks floating around. But if you want to be able to like pick out the garlic or whatever, you might just want to crush them. And even if you don't have a garlic crusher or whatever, you can always use one of these handy dandy cooking knives to do the crushing for you. Works like a charm. Now that I've got my garlic all minced up, I'm gonna move on to chopping my onion. I still don't know how to chop onions or anything else for that matter, so I got no tips for you. Your guess is as good as mine. Look at that. A precious, tear-inducing ball of sadness. Isn't it great? Would you look at that? I didn't cry at all. Remember, you don't need to make the onion slices too small. As long as you chop them up and the slices aren't too large, then it should be just perfect. Like my relationship with Janet. Janet, why did you leave? This is usually the part where I would start grating the ginger, but like I said, I'm being lazy and today we're going to be using ground ginger. But a good rule of thumb to follow is usually grate the ginger until you get bored, and by that point you probably have enough. So kudos to all you lazy people out there. So now that that's all done, we're going to put the onion, the garlic, the ginger, and the red pepper into the pan. Right now you're going to want your pan at medium-ish heat. I have mine heating up to 4 right now, so I don't know if different stoves have different heat ratings, so please don't set your houses on fire. If I were smarter, I would have started heating the oil up sooner so that it would be ready by the time I put all my ingredients in, but usually I start heating the oil up really early and then it takes me like a million years to chop everything, so by the time I'm like halfway through the chopping business, the oil's already like burning. So maybe if you have a good sense of timing, you can calibrate it so that the pan is done heating up by the time you're done chopping everything, so you don't have to be stuck waiting like me. Quick note about the ground pork. It's good to defrost it ahead of time, so when you cook it, you don't get a bunch of like watery stuff melting while you cook. Today I was smart about the pork at least, and I remembered to defrost it. Kind of. It's only like partially frozen right now. I'm gonna turn the vent fan on before things get too steamy, so if you hear a weird groaning sound in the background, don't worry about it. This is getting pretty close to the heat I want, so one more quick note. Always remember to eat snacks before you cook, otherwise you're gonna be hungry when you cook, and it's no good cooking on an empty stomach. That's why I had some Nagaraya cracker nuts before I started cooking. Not sponsored. Seriously though, these are super good. You should try them. It looks like the pan has hit a pretty good level of sizzle, so what you want to do now is set a timer for 2 minutes and just let it cook. I guess you can stir it a little bit. think of how you triumphed over the onions as you chopped them. You may have shed many tears, unlike me, but nevertheless, it was you who chopped these onions and put them in the pan. You're a champion. Don't forget that. So our 2-minute timer has gone off, which means you want to do two things. You want to add the pork in and turn up the heat a couple more notches. So I'm going to turn this from 4 to 6. Usually I prefer to cook at lower heats for a longer amount of time, just to reduce the risk of burning everything. I've burned a lot of bacon in my lifetime. Alright, it's been a while-ish, and it looks like the pork is pretty much ready to go. Here, I'll show you. So you want it to look mostly whitish, brownish. It's okay if there's a little bit of pink left because you're going to be cooking it longer anyway, but make sure it's not like raw still. That's the most important thing to watch out for. So, now comes the fun part. The recipe calls for 5 tablespoons of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of fish sauce, but I usually do 4 of each just to get a nice balance between the sweet and the salty, but you can adjust it according to whatever you want it to taste like, so you do you, fam. So this is where I like to get creative with the recipe and throw in a bunch of other sauces just for fun. So today we have soy sauce, sesame oil, a little bit of paprika, some secret aardvark sauce. This sauce is so good. If you haven't tried it, please try it. A little bit of white vinegar, and last but not least, cumin. I put this in literally everything I cook. Literally everything. You don't need that much though. It has pretty strong flavor, so just a little pinch. You can always throw in like Worcestershire or barbecue sauce or mayonnaise if you're really adventurous, but that's all I'm doing for today. Now you want to do 2 things. First, of course, you want to mix up your weird sauce combination so that the pork can really get flavored by this sauce cocktail. The second thing that I like to do is turn it up a smidgen more. So right now, I'm turning it up from 6 to 7. The recipe says to let this stand for a couple minutes, so I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes. It's important that you don't stir this because not stirring it allows the pork to caramelize in all the sauce, and if you stir it, you're going to disrupt that process, so just leave it alone. Alright, 2 minutes are up, so what you want to do now is stir it a little bit, get the sauce distributed a little bit more, and now we've come to the pretty boring part. You're going to repeat this process until you reach a good caramelization level, and this usually takes a while. I'd say it's probably going to be 20-30 minutes before this hits my desired level of caramelization, so we'll time it and see. The recipe says to do this in 30-second intervals, but then it gets really boring. And doing 2-minute intervals instead allows the caramelization to happen for a little bit longer before you break it up, so I just prefer it this way. What you can do when you're waiting though is slice some scallions for the pork garnish. I like using 2 or 3 just because scallions are pretty good. This part gets really tedious, and it's really easy to get impatient and turn up the heat super high and end up accidentally burning the pork, so just stay frosty. Plus you can do whatever you want in those 2-minute intervals, as long as you keep an eye on the pork to keep it from burning. Usually the midpoint-ish point is when you start hearing this sound. Listen closely. That sizzle tells you that the caramelization process has really gotten going at this point, and it's starting to cook the flavor into the pork, which of course is exactly what you want. If you want to prepare some sides while you're waiting, you can always prepare some shredded carrots or lettuce or cucumber or rice noodles. All of those taste really great with this pork. Definitely would recommend. Although as you probably guessed, I'm too lazy to do anything beyond the minimum. If you're at that point where it looks like some of the pork is cooking faster than the rest, you can always turn down the heat a little bit to avoid burning everything. You want it to be nicely cooked, but not overcooked. I think once this timer goes off, we should be all set. One more quick thing I forgot to mention earlier. When you first start mixing in the brown sugar with the fish sauce and whatever other sauces you put in there, chances are it's going to smell pretty bad, That's normal. The air is just getting used to the smell of the brown sugar and the fish sauce. But once everything starts sizzling along nicely, it's gonna smell real nice. This part's always tricky because you want it to get that nice, almost char. But if you cook it too long, then you're gonna end up burning it. So you have to find the happy medium that makes it tasty, but not burnt. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. So this is close to what you want your pork to look like. You got that nice dark brown. It smells so good. Could probably cook it for maybe even a little bit longer, but I already kind of burned a little bit of it, so I don't really want to risk it. So now that it's done cooking, you can take the scallions you chopped earlier and add them as the final garnish. If you want, you can cook the scallions at the same time you're cooking the pork, but I usually like to just pop them in at the end, just so they kind of maintain their freshness when you serve the pork. I usually like to throw in some tomatoes and spinach too because, you know, it's important to eat your vegetables. Let's have a look at this bowl. The sweetness to saltiness ratio in this dish never fails to satisfy. It's so good. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun filming it, and of course eating. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, please let me know. And if there are any recipes you want me to try out, hit me up, fam. As usual, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, please. Thank you all. Have a nice day. It's a piece of cake to bake a pretty cake. If the way is hazy, you gotta do the cooking by the book. You know you can't be lazy if you use the method recipe. The cake could end up crazy. You gotta do the cooking by the book. And then you'll have a